Leake Watts Services is one of the largest and most respected social services agencies in the city. Founded as an orphanage 177 years ago, they provide support for children and families dealing with emotional and psychiatric challenges. They accomplish this through high-quality, community-based programs and services to over 2,800 children and families, primarily right here in the Bronx. And now to tell us a lot more about this is the Executive Director, Alan Mucatel. Thank you for being on the program. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Tell me all about this organization. I'm fascinated by 177 years it's been around.
The agency has a really rich history, as you mentioned in your introduction, starting as an orphanage and now really functioning in a much more contemporary way, dealing with contemporary issues and contemporary problems and challenges.
No longer an orphanage?
No.
Okay.
The days of an orphanage are long gone, although we still actually have a property with an old orphanage building on it that's used more as administrative offices.
Okay, so what happens there? If it's not orphanage, what do you do?
In that property, we have a campus, really. We have some youth who live there who are placed for educational and therapeutic purposes. They had issues in their own public schools and need additional supports, and so a residential setting for them may be more appropriate. In addition to that, there's a school there, for a high school, that is for children with emotional and learning disabilities. Those youth on campus attend that school, as do some day students who come mostly from Bronx communities to come to the school. In addition, also on that campus, because it's a large place, we have daycare and early childhood programs for preschoolers.
Okay, and these students come from all over the Bronx?
All over the Bronx. They also attend, in addition to that, they attend a elementary school that we operate in the Williamsburg Bridge section of the Bronx.
Okay, so how does this happen? How do, a student is in a regular school, how do they end in your school, and what is the process?
If a child is when a child is in regular public school, and if he's having issues learning, or he has behavioral challenges or emotional issues, he may be identified as needing special education needs. And there is something called the Committee on Special Education that would make a determination that this child needs more supports. And if it's determined that those supports couldn't happen in his local or her local public school, then
because local public schools do have special education courses, okay?
Absolutely.
So let's differentiate. What is the difference?
Absolutely. In fact, the ideal setting, in fact, by federal law, is that one should be educated in the least restrictive environment, which would be in a regular local public school.
I see.
And so if you have maybe a small amount of special education needs, perhaps you are attending a regular class and receiving some extra services, or maybe you are going to attend a special class in your local public school. But if those kind of services are not sufficient so that you can succeed in your educational goals, then the Committee for Special Education, in conjunction with the family, will look for a placement perhaps in a more segregated setting, a more focused setting, like our Biondi School in Williamsbridge.
Okay, and who pays for this? Does that come from the Board of Education money, or is it a private funding, or foundations? Where does it come from?
That's a good question. By federal law, everyone is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. So that means if your local public school can't provide that service to you, no matter what your special education needs may be, and they determine that you should be sent to a school like ours, it is actually all paid for through the Board of Education, and it's completely paid for by taxpayer dollars.
So how many students are we talking about going through your programs right now?
Between the lower school and the high school, there are close to 400 students receiving special education services with Leake Watts.
Okay, and tell me about the programs that you provide for them.
In terms of the school, we follow the same core curriculum of New York State, as we're required to do. Some of our students can go on to receive Regents diplomas because they may have cognitive strengths but emotional or behavioral deficits. Other students have more issues with learning, and their curriculum will be modified so that they can learn as much as they can along the same path as all regular education students would.
And then again, the high school students are in a separate facility than those who are in different levels, or how does that work?
The high school is a separate location, and the high school happens to be located in the Bronx, right over the Riverdale border. and there we serve actually middle school and high school. They're separated only by age, like you would in a regular school.
Okay, Leake and Watts, other than the school, what other programs do you have? Because I know there's a lot more.
There's a lot more, right. In the Bronx, we are a large family foster care provider, serving over 400 children in foster care. We also have 2 mother-infant programs in the Bronx, which are children, young women who are in foster care and have children of their own, typically under 3 years old. So we have 2 residents like that. We operate 3 daycare programs. One's in Highbridge, one's in Soundview, and one's in the Castle Hill area. We also run a Head Start program. Those students, those youngsters typically go to the child care programs that I just identified as well. We also run a preventive services program that serves about 180 families, and preventive services is intended to assist families who are facing a range of challenges so as to avoid placement in foster care, or if the child had been in foster care, to help in the transition back to their family.
Give me a hypothetical. Tell me a family that is going through what?
Let's say it could be a family where the parents have substance abuse problems. And so as a result, their substance abuse issues consume their attention, and in the end, perhaps their child is neglected. The child is not going to school, the child is not clean, the child is not getting medical care as the family engages in substance abuse issues. If it's really determined in that family that the child is not, depending on the severity of the neglect that's going on, really, if it's determined that one could work with that family through the court system, it's determined, and through ACS, it's determined that the child can remain with that family and we could get this family back on track, then they'll remain with the family and we'll continue to work with them, ensuring that they go into drug treatment.
So basically, preventive services means you deal with this family that may go into a crisis before they go into a crisis.
Correct.
And
correct.
you deal with whatever they're dealing with.
It could be housing issues, it can be employment issues, it could be, like I mentioned, substance abuse issues. Whatever is coming up that is really a deterrent to their ability to ensure that their child is safe.
You mentioned another program that I think sounds fascinating, mother-infant.
Correct.
Young mothers who may be in high school or trying to stay in school and need assistance. Is that what's happening?
Correct. These are mothers typically from 15 to 21 years old. They are actually youth in foster care themselves who have had a child, and they're group homes. One of them has 9 young girls and their children in it, and another has 12. In addition to that, I should also just mention that we operate 2 community residences for young people with developmental disabilities. That is, folks with cognitive disability primarily, but they may also have psychiatric issues as well.
And they live there.
And they live there. They could turn out for them to be permanent housing for them. Of course, the goal for everybody is, if possible, for them to move to a more independent setting, perhaps a supported or a supervised apartment setting. We run 2 programs like that in the Bronx, and we're actually in the process of opening 6 more.
So your organization is primarily a Bronx-based organization. You're all over the place with all kinds of services.
Exactly. We really are a Bronx organization, even though that main campus that we talked about earlier happens to be located, like I said, in southern Yonkers. But that's most of our programs, and the majority of the people we're serving, and actually most of our staff, I'd say about 400 of our staff are Bronx residents as well. So most of our focus is actually in the Bronx.
When we come back, we're going to have 2 of your colleagues join us, and then we're going to talk about specifically your foster care programs, which are very, very interesting. We'll be right back.